let's talk about some awesome knitting patterns that were released in March. Rochelle here, and I'm back to share some yarn goodness with y'all today. These patterns are going to include garments, accessories, and patterns for the home. Now, all of these patterns are free, either as a download or free on the designer's blog. And as always, I will leave links to every pattern we talk about today in the description box below. So let's get started with garments. The first one we have is the Colorblock Cardigan, designed by Amy Gunderson for Premier Yarns. This calls for air weight yarn, and the bust circumference ranges between 38 to 72 inches. And in centimeters, that is 96.5 to 183. The needle size that you will need include a US 9, which is a 5.5 millimeter, and a US 8, which is a 5 millimeter. The ease in this pattern is 4 to 12 inches of positive ease, and in centimeters, that's 10.2 to 30.5. You will need a few skills, including knit, purl, seaming with the mattress stitch, changing colors, decreasing, and sewing on buttons. And this cardigan is worked in columns that are then seamed together. Okay, let's go to our next one. It is the Cranberry Spritz Sweater, designed by Martha Emily for Knitty Magazine. This calls for worsted weight yarn, and the bust circumference ranges between 33.5 to 65.5 inches. And in centimeters, that's 85.1 to 166.5. You will need a US 6, which is a 4 millimeter knitting needle. And the ease includes 1.5 inches or 4 centimeters of positive ease. The skills you'll need include knit, purl, make one right, make one left, double start cast on, 3 needle join, German short rows, alternating tuck stitch, and purl 2 together. Okay, if you're looking for a pattern that has a lot of new, fun, exciting skills in it, this sweater pattern is for you. All right. Also, it is knit top down in a yoke style with a slightly rounded V-neck, and it also features the Fences hem stitch pattern. I have never ever heard of the Fences hem stitch. Let me know if you've heard of it. Up next, we have the Strata Cardigan, designed by Tori Gerbese Chapel from Premier Yarns. Y'all know me in names by now. I just can't seem to get them right. This calls for worsted weight yarn, and the bust circumference ranges between 38.25 to 70.25 inches. And in centimeters, that is 97.2 to 178.4. You will need 2 knitting needles. You will need a US 8, which is a 5 millimeter, and a US 7, which is a 4.5 millimeter. It calls for 6 to 8 inches of positive ease, and in centimeters, that is 15.3 to 20.3, and that's positive ease. The skills you'll need include knit, purl, changing colors, knit 2 together, slip, slip, knit, knit front and back, seaming with the mattress stitch, picking up and knitting stitches. And it is worked flat from the bottom up in pieces, and then it's seamed together. And then the neck edging and the front bands are picked up and knitted once the body is complete. Our next pattern is the Pleats Pullover, designed by Laura Selvage of Knit a Bit, Crochet Away. This calls for sport weight yarn, and it actually calls for sport and lace held together. And the bust circumference ranges between 34 to 66 inches. And in centimeters, that is 86 to 168. You will need 2 knitting needle sizes. You will need a US 4, which is a 3.5 millimeter, and a US 3, which is a 3.25 millimeter. You will need to know a few skills. You'll need to know how to knit, make one left, make one right, purl, cast on, and do the tubular bind off. And in terms of ease, it has 5 inches of positive ease, and that's 12.7 centimeters. So this sweater is worked top down and flat for the beginning of the yoke, and then it's joined together, and then you knit in the round. Okay, so next up we have the Cozy Teddy Vest, designed by Rachel Alford of Cozy Nooks Design. It calls for a bulky weight yarn, and the bust circumference ranges between 30 to 62 inches, and in centimeters, that's 75 to 155 centimeters. The knitting needle, I'm getting tongue twisted. The knitting needle that you will need is a US 11 8 millimeter. And also, if you hear any barking in the back, it's my little puppy. He needs attention all the time. Okay, so this pattern does have 2 inches or 5 centimeters of positive ease. And the skills needed include casting on, binding off, knitting, and purling. It is knit bottom up and features a seed stitch, and it is made in one piece and seamed along the sides. The collar and armhole finishing is picked up and worked evenly around for a nice clean finish. Our next pattern is the Endless sweater, designed by Amy Gunderson for Premier Yarns. Okay, so this one calls for DK weight yarn, and the bust circumference ranges between 34.75 to 66.75 inches. And in centimeters, that's 88.5 to 169.5 centimeters. You will need 2 knitting needle sizes. You will need a US 5, which is a 3.75 millimeter, and a US 3, which is a 3.25 millimeter. This one has 3.5 inches of positive ease, and that is 9 centimeters. The skills you will need include knit, purl, knit 2 together, slip, slip, knit, yarn over, sloped bind off. I'm trying to think, I'm not sure if I've ever heard of a sloped bind off. Let me know if you've ever heard of this. So it is written bottom up, and it features the cable mesh stitch. The front, back, and sleeves are knit flat, separately from the bottom upward. Then the pieces are seamed together, and the neck edging is worked in the round. So that's the construction for that sweater. All right, let's move on to the Dottie Cardigan, designed by the Knit Picks design team. So this one calls for DK weight yarn, and the bust circumference ranges between 33.75 to 57.25 inches. And in centimeters, that's 85.7 to 145.4. It calls for 2 knitting needle sizes. That's a US 5, 3.75 millimeter, and a US 3, which is a 3.25 millimeter. Now this does have between 2 to 4 inches of positive ease, and that's 5 to 10 centimeters. You will need to know how to knit, yarn over, knit 2 together, slip, slip, knit, purl, make one right, make one left. And the Dottie cardigan is knit in one piece to the armholes with an all over Swiss dot effect eyelet lace pattern. Very interesting. The sleeves are knit separately and joined to the body before working raglan sleeve shaping on the yoke. So it might sound a little bit of it might sound a little complicated, but I definitely think you can do it. Okay, so the next one is the Sea Scalloped Sweater, designed by Sophia Magdalena, and it is a DK weight yarn. The bust circumference ranges between 36.25 to 65 inches. And in centimeters, that's 92 to 165. So you will need 2 knitting needle sizes. You'll need a US 6, which is a 4 millimeter, and a US 4, which is a 3.5. This particular garment has 4.7 inches or 12 centimeters of positive ease. When it comes to positive ease or negative ease, you really want to think about that when you're making your garments, because that's really going to determine how it's going to fit you. All right, so you will need to know how to knit, purl, do German short rows, make one right, make one left, knit 2 together, slip, slip, knit, I-cord bind off, and the long tail cast on. It is stranded color work, and it is knit in the round, top down, seamlessly, using compound raglan increases to shape the yoke. So that's how that one is made. Let's move on to our next one, and we have the Ennis cardigan, which is designed by Cordella Vore, and it calls for worsted weight yarn, and the bust circumference ranges between 34.75 to 65.75 inches, and in centimeters, that's 88 to 167. You will need 2 knitting needle sizes. You'll need a US 8, which is a 5 millimeter, and a US 6, which is a 4 millimeter. The ease is 4.75 inches or 12 centimeters of positive ease. And you will need to know how to knit, purl, do German shirt rows, and the double rice stitch. So that's another new skill to me. I've never heard of that one. Let me know if you have. So this cardigan is a V-neck drop shoulder cardigan that is worked top down. Okay, our next pattern is the Nostalia Pullover, designed by Laura Zuckate for Yarnia. And this calls for worsted weight yarn. The bust circumference ranges between 40 to 68 inches, and that's 102 to 175 centimeters. You will need a US 8, which is a 5 millimeter, and a US 7, which is a 4.5 millimeter. The ease is 12 inches, and that's 30.5 centimeters of positive ease. So you will need to know how to slip stitches, knit, purl, knit 2 together, slip, slip, knit, and make cables. This pattern features a twisted rib, cables, and a drop shoulder. All right, let's move on to our next one. We have the Call and Response Vest, designed by Laura Barker for Knitty Magazine. So this one calls for bulky weight yarn, and the bust circumference ranges between 32.25 to 65.5 inches. And in centimeters, that's 82 to 166.5. You will need a US 9 5.5 millimeter and a US 10.5 6.5 millimeter knitting needles. The ease is 1.5 inches or 3.5 centimeters of positive ease. You will need to know how to knit, purl, crochet cast on, work intarsia, wrap and turn short rows, or German short rows. So when it comes to short rows, you do have options. And it begins with a ribbed hem that may be worked with flat intarsia or intarsia in the round. The body of the pullover is worked seamlessly from the ribbing up. The edges are finished with a stretchy I-cord that is worked as you go. Let's move on to accessories. All right, the first accessory we have is the banner scarf designed by Joel Hoverson for Pearl Soho. This calls for fingering weight yarn, and the finished size is 7 inches wide and 46 inches long at the points. And in centimeters, that is 17.8 to 117. Or 17.8 by 117. You will need a US 5, which is a 3.0 millimeter. And you will need to know how to do the long tail cast on, knit, knit front and back, knit 2 together, and bind off knitwise. The scarf is worked lengthwise, flat, in one seamless piece. You cast on along the long side and start knitting in garter stitch. And you're going to increase at the end of every row. All right, our next accessory is the Total Newbie Fingerless Mitts designed by the Brooklyn Craft Company. So this calls for bulky weight yarn, and the finished size is 7.5 inches or 19 centimeters long from the wrist edge to the finger edge. And you will need a US 10.5, which is a 6.5 millimeter. To make this, you simply need to know how to cast on, knit, and cast off. It doesn't get any more simpler than that. So, it is worked flat and seamed, And this is a great beginner pattern because it only uses the knit stitch. So definitely look this one up if you are a beginner knitter. All right, our next accessory is the electric shawl designed by Vanessa Casarelli Black for Yarnia. And it calls for worsted weight yarn. And the finished size has a wingspan of 113.25 inches or 287 centimeters. And the center depth is 20 inches or 50.75 centimeters. You will need a US 7, which is a 4.5 millimeter knitting needle. And to make this, you will need to know how to long tail cast on, knit, purl, slip, slip, knit, slip with yarn in front, knit two together, knit in the back loop, and yarn over. And as I always say, if there's any skills that you're not familiar with, you can always go on YouTube. There's a ton of tutorials there that can help you out. So this shawl begins with a center panel that is knit from the bottom up. Stitches are then picked up on the sides of this panel and worked from side to side. Okay, let's talk about patterns for the home. All right, the first one is the Gradient Drift Blanket designed by Gianna Mueller for Pearl Soho. This calls for DK weight yarn. And the finished size is 40 inches wide and 48.5 inches long. And in centimeters, that's 102 by 123. So you will need a US 6, which is a 4.0 millimeter knitting needle. You will need to know how to do the long tail cast on and knit. That's it. And it is worked flat, seamless in one piece. And it is knit in all garter stitch. So this pattern is really good for beginners because all you need to know how to do is the knit stitch. All right, our next blanket, or the next pattern rather, is a blanket. And it is the Trapeziate Blanket designed by Kate Harvey for Knitting Magazine. And this calls for DK weight yarn. And the finished size is 41 inches in width and 60 inches in length. And in centimeters, that's 104 by 152. You will need a US 6 4 millimeter knitting needle. And you only need to know how to knit and purl in order to make this blanket. And it is knit flat in one piece using intarsia. All right, I did want to talk about what I am wearing. This is the Empower People Cowl designed by Casapinka. And I did an entire video all about this cowl. And I will leave my Ravelry link below with the video link in it. And so this is actually yarn that I hand dyed from my company QueensYarnBoutique. And yeah, I'm really proud of it. I really like it. Okay, so what were your favorite patterns from today? We're into April now, so maybe you saw some of these patterns back in March. Let me know which ones you like, which ones you would like to try. And so, yeah, I would love to know. Also, since I knit and I crochet, I have made a crochet roundup for March as well. Let's see here. Let's talk about some awesome crochet patterns that were released this March. So you're gonna wanna think about ease when you're choosing a pattern because that's really going to impact the shape and the fit of your garment. If you're looking for a pattern that has a ton of skills in it, this is the pattern for you. You will definitely learn some new techniques. I still have not done anything with intarsia. I'm a little nervous, but I think I can do it, and I know you can too. So for those of you out there that likes using lace weight yarn and very, very thin crochet hooks, this pattern is for you. All right, so let me know what you worked on while watching, or did you just chill? I always love knowing what are you all doing while you're watching. Definitely leave me a comment. I would really appreciate it. Thank you so much for liking this video, for subscribing, and also clicking that notification bell. Thank you so very, very much. All right, y'all. Thanks for watching, and until next time, bye.